In March of 1998, Johnny Cash, 66 years old, paid around $20,000 to give Nashville the middle finger. Literally. The photograph showed him in prison, raising his middle finger at the camera. The caption thanked the Nashville music establishment and country radio warmly, sincerely for their support, and it was not a joke. Here are 10 times Nashville wrote Johnny Cash off, ranked from quietly dismissive to genuinely staggering. Number 9 is why that photograph exists. Number 10 is the one that outlived every man who doubted him. Number 1, the honor that was really a headstone. In 1980, the Country Music Hall of Fame inducted Johnny Cash. He was 48 years old, the youngest living man they had ever put on that wall. The industry called it a coronation. Nashville loves a ceremony, and this one had everything. The plaque, the speeches, the standing ovation from people who had spent the previous decade selling his records. Think about what an induction actually says. It says the work is complete. It says the important part already happened. Halls of Fame are built in the past tense. Cash had 23 years of life in front of him, and he would make some of the most talked about music of his entire career in the last decade of it. But from 1980 onward, the industry's posture quietly changed. He stopped being an artist Nashville was building and became an artist Nashville was honoring. And those are very different budgets. Here's what the record shows. In the 6 years after that induction, he charted exactly one top 10 single. Nashville told him he was history and then acted surprised when he started performing like it. You can walk past that plaque today. It went up when he was 48, and everything that made him famous to your kids happened after it. Number 2. The Chicken Suit. In 1984, Columbia Records released a Johnny Cash single called The Chicken in Black. The premise was that Cash's brain had been transplanted into a chicken. There was a video. He wore a blue and yellow superhero costume. The chicken robbed a bank. Same label, same man, same decade as Man in Black and the Folsom Prison recordings. There are 2 ways to read it, and neither flatters Nashville. The generous reading is that Cash cut it as deliberate sabotage, a man so disgusted with what his label was asking him to become that he handed them the most ridiculous possible version of it. The other reading is that Columbia sincerely believed a novelty record was the right commercial play for one of the most serious artists in American music. Cash himself later called the whole thing an embarrassment. Here's what nobody said out loud at the time. A label does not put a 52-year-old legend in a chicken suit because it has a plan for him. It does that because it has run out of ideas and is testing whether anything sticks. The single charted higher than the serious records he made either side of it. That fact told Columbia the audience would take a joke. What it told Cash was that the people paying him no longer knew who he was. Number 3. 28 years ended over sales figures. In July of 1986, Columbia Records dropped Johnny Cash. The relationship went back to 1958 and a single called All Over Again. 28 years. Rick Blackburn, who ran Columbia's Nashville division, told the Associated Press it was the hardest decision he had ever had to make in his life. The stated reason was slumping sales. Cash had not put a single in the country top 10 since The Baron in 1981. He was 54 years old and he did not have a record deal. Here's the detail that puts it in perspective. Cash was not the only legacy artist Columbia cut loose that year. The label also parted ways with Miles Davis. 1986 was the year one company decided that 2 of the most significant American musicians alive were no longer worth the shelf space. Blackburn took enormous criticism for it, and that decision followed him for the rest of his career. But the criticism misses the shape of the thing. This was not one executive's misjudgment. It was an accounting exercise arriving at the same answer across the whole industry at once. The catalog is the asset, the man is the cost. Every one of those Columbia records is still in print. The company that stopped believing in him still sells them to you today. Number 4. 5 years of records, nobody was sent. Between 1986 and 1991, Johnny Cash made 6 albums for Mercury Records. Most people who consider themselves Cash fans could not name one of them. That is not because the material was weak. Johnny Cash's Coming to Town arrived in 1987 with covers of Elvis Costello and Guy Clark, and it cracked the top 40. Water from the Wells of Home put him in a room with Paul McCartney, Waylon Jennings, Emmylou Harris, Glenn Campbell, and Hank Williams Jr. On paper, that is an event record. Nothing happened, and this was not the only attempt at a supergroup solution. Around the same time, Cash was one quarter of the Highwaymen, alongside Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, and Chris Christopherson. That project generated genuine chart success and proved the appetite for outlaw country at scale. But even that could not translate into a functioning solo career inside the Nashville machine. Here's what the industry had quietly decided by then. Country radio in the late 1980s was rebuilding itself around a younger, cleaner, more marketable sound, and Cash did not fit the format. Not because the songs were bad, because the voice was 60 and the format wanted 30, so the records came out and went nowhere. No campaign, no push, no reason for a program director to take a risk on him. 6 albums in 5 years is not the output of a man who had given up. It is the output of a man working extremely hard inside a building where nobody was listening. Mercury reissued the entire run as a box set decades later, remastered with proper liner notes. It got better treatment in reissue than it ever got on release. Number 5. The class that replaced him, 1989, put 4 names into country music at once: Garth Brooks, Clint Black, Travis Tritt, Alan Jackson. Within about 3 years, those 4 had rebuilt the commercial center of the entire genre. Radio doubled down on them and then tripled down. Stadiums replaced theaters. The audience got younger and enormously bigger, and the money followed it. This is the part people get wrong about the wilderness years. Nobody sat in a boardroom and decided to destroy Johnny Cash. Something far more ordinary happened. Consultants ran research on what listeners wanted next. The research came back with a demographic, and Cash was outside it. He was not blacklisted. He was aged out by a spreadsheet. Here's the part that lands later. At the 1998 Grammy Awards, Best Country Album came down to Cash, Alan Jackson, George Strait, Dwight Yoakam, and Patti Loveless. The class of '89 and the man they replaced in the same category 9 years on. You already know how that ends, and we will get to it. All 4 of them are on country radio somewhere this afternoon, so occasionally is Cash, but only the records he cut before 1969. Number 6. Branson. By the early 1990s, Johnny Cash was playing Branson, Missouri. If you do not know what that means, here is the translation. Branson is where American entertainers go once the industry has decided they are a nostalgia product. A theater, coach parties, 2 shows a day, an audience that came for the memory rather than the record. It is steady, honest work. It is also unmistakably a destination rather than a stop. Cash took a residency at the Wayne Newton Theater, one of the biggest recording artists in the history of American music, and his commercial future had been reduced to a fixed address in the Ozarks. He hated it and said so plainly afterwards. Some nights the room was thin. The whole arrangement ran against the one thing that had always made him worth watching, which was the sense that this man might do anything at all. Here is what the industry read into it, and this is the damaging part. Nashville saw an artist who had accepted the terms. Once you take the theater, everyone assumes you have stopped arguing. He was 60. Everybody in the business had him filed. The most watched recording of his life had not been made yet. Number 7. Another genre came and claimed him. In 1992, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted Johnny Cash. Sit with that sequence. Country radio would not play his new records. His own genre had honored him 12 years earlier and moved on. And now rock and roll, a different industry, a different building, an entirely different set of people, put him on the wall while he was still recording. Rock had been paying attention the whole time. The Sun Records years under Sam Phillips, the same man who had discovered Elvis Presley and Jerry Lee Lewis, the Prison albums, the Black Clothes, the flat refusal to be handled. To rock audiences, he had never been a country artist who occasionally went hard. He was one of the original hard ones and always had been. Here's what Nashville missed by standing too close. The thing that made Cash unsellable. To country radio in 1992, the age, the darkness, the wear in the voice was the exact thing another audience would pay for. The industry saw an asset that had depreciated. Everyone else saw an artist who had finally caught up with his own material. If you're seeing the pattern here, if you're realizing this was never about the quality of the work, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this reach people who care about this music. and subscribe because we do this every week. That induction happened 1 year before a man out of the hip-hop world got in a car and drove out to see him. Number 8, a rap producer, a living room, one guitar. In 1993, Rick Rubin went to see Johnny Cash. Rubin had co-founded Def Jam Records and built the careers of the Beastie Boys, Run DMC, Slayer, and Public Enemy. He had no country track record whatsoever and no obvious reason to be in the room. What he offered was almost insultingly simple. No band, no Nashville production, no attempt to make him sound current. Cash, a guitar, a chair, and whatever songs he actually wanted to sing. Nashville had spent 13 years trying to solve Johnny Cash as a marketing problem. Rubin's entire idea was that there was no problem. Point a microphone at the man and stop helping. This was the same instinct that had driven the acoustic revival happening elsewhere in music at the time. The idea that stripping production away does not diminish an artist. It reveals one. Cash was the most extreme possible test of that theory. American Recordings came out in 1994. It was the least commercial sounding record he had made in decades. A 62-year-old man alone with a guitar, and it reached an audience that had never bought a country album in their lives. Here's what that proved, and it is the whole argument of this video. The audience for Johnny Cash had never gone anywhere. It had been sitting there the entire time waiting for somebody to stop sanding the edges off him. 6 albums tried to fit him into the format. 1 album ignored the format completely and worked. Nobody in Nashville made that record. That fact was about to be advertised. Number 9, $20,000 and one finger. On the 25th of February 1998, at Radio City Music Hall, Unchained won the Grammy for Best Country Album. Cash beat Alan Jackson, George Strait, Dwight Yoakam, and Patti Loveless. Country radio still would not play him. A trade editor, asked about it, said that if there were real demand for the music, it would get played. So Rubin bought a page. The photograph had been taken at San Quentin Prison in 1969 by Jim Marshall, one of the defining photographers of the rock and roll era, who asked Cash to give him a shot for the warden. Cash raised his middle finger. For nearly 30 years, it was a fairly obscure image. Rubin reportedly spent around $20,000 putting it across a full page of Billboard. On stands the 14th of March, 1998, beneath a line saying that American Recordings and Johnny Cash would like to acknowledge the Nashville music establishment and country radio for their support. Here's why it worked as more than a joke. Billboard is a trade paper. That advertisement was not aimed at fans. It was aimed squarely at the rooms where every decision about Cash had been made for 18 years, and every one of those people opened it at their desk. Country radio never relented. It did not matter. That photograph now hangs on more walls than most of the records that beat him ever sold. Number 10, the last recording and the end of the argument. In 2002, Johnny Cash recorded a cover of Hurt, written by Trent Reznor of 9 Inch Nails, originally released on their album The Downward Spiral in 1994. Cash was 70. His health was gone. June was months from dying. The video, directed by Mark Romanek, was filmed at the House of Cash Museum in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Shuttered, water-damaged, and full of ruined memorabilia, and cut against footage of the young man who had built all of it. There is no performance in it. He is simply sitting there, being 70, having lost. It became the most widely seen thing he ever did. Here's what the industry had been getting wrong for 22 years, and this is the whole of it. Nashville kept trying to sell a younger Johnny Cash to an audience that wanted the older one. Every commercial decision from 1980 onward was an attempt to hide the age, the wear, and the darkness. Rubin's entire method was to point a camera straight at them. Cash died on the 12th of September, 2003. He is now the country artist most likely to be known by people who do not listen to country music, and almost none of that reputation was built by the industry that was supposed to be building it. Somebody under 25 heard that record for the first time this week. Nashville was not cruel to Johnny Cash. It was worse than that. It was confident, and it was wrong for 18 straight years, and it never once admitted it. Tell me in the comments which one you would put at number 1. Team Chicken Suit? Team Branson? Team Billboard advertisement? I read all of them. The most valuable thing Johnny Cash ever made, he made after the industry had finished with him. which tells you roughly what the industry's opinion was ever worth.